The day the world split in half for Caleb Meyers began like any other Tuesday, quiet, unremarkable, and humid. He was sitting in a small, tan-walled exam room at Northbridge Medical Center, tapping his steel-toed boots against the linoleum floor, waiting for results he wasn't particularly worried about. Just some fatigue, he thought. Maybe a stubborn flu. Instead, the doctor came in with that look, a subtle tightening of the jaw, a slight heaviness in his voice. Stage 2 lymphoma, the doctor said. It's treatable, Caleb. But we need to start soon. Words like chemotherapy, treatment options, and survival rates spun around him, dull and hollow. Caleb nodded mechanically. He didn't ask many questions. He didn't cry. Just took the folder the nurse handed him, shook the doctor's hand, and walked out into the sunlight like nothing had changed. The world looked the same, but it wasn't. He sat in his rusted '94 Silverado in the hospital parking lot for 20 minutes before calling anyone. Then he tapped his wife's number. "Hey, babe," he said as soon as she picked up. "Can you come home soon?" We need to talk." There was a pause. "I've got errands," she said. "Groceries and a stop at the dry cleaner. I'll be back later." He almost told her then. Almost. But something in her voice stopped him. "Okay. See you at home." He hung up, started the engine, and drove home. Their house, white-trimmed, modest, and nestled in a blue-collar neighborhood on the outskirts of Redfield, Oregon, felt strange the moment he stepped inside. Quiet, still, too clean. The first thing he noticed was the missing pair of boots by the door. Then the closet, half empty. Her suitcase gone. The framed photo from their wedding in Savannah missing from the nightstand. Then came the text. "I didn't sign up for this." Just 5 words, sitting beneath a screenshot of their joint bank account. Balance, $0. Every dollar, $42,600 they had scraped together over 6 years of marriage, was gone. Transferred into an account bearing only her name. Caleb stared at the screen for a full minute. His heart didn't race. His hands didn't shake. He didn't scream or hurl the phone against the wall. Instead, he typed back 2 words. "Take care." Then he set the phone down on the kitchen table, opened a beer from the fridge, and went out to the back porch. The sky was painted orange and purple, the kind of sunset that made the hills behind their home look like a postcard. He sat in the old rocking chair his granddad had left him and watched it fade into twilight. No tears came. The cancer, he could face. The betrayal was something else entirely. Around dusk, his neighbor Bruce ambled over, resting his elbows on the shared fence. "You all right, Caleb? Saw Emily pack up and leave in a damn hurry this afternoon." Caleb didn't look at him. Just took another sip from the beer bottle. "Got some health news," he said. "She didn't take it well." Bruce didn't ask for more. Men like him didn't pry. "Well, my wife makes a mean stew. Let us know if you're hungry." Caleb nodded. "Appreciate it." After Bruce disappeared into his house, Caleb went back inside and pulled a dusty blue folder from the kitchen drawer. His uncle Nate had handed it to him a month ago at a family barbecue, saying, "You never know when your life will take a left turn." Nate used to work in estate planning before retirement. He still handled paperwork for family and friends on the side. Inside the folder were drafts of a new will, power of attorney documents, and paperwork for a small parcel of forest land in Windermere that Caleb's grandfather had left him. He'd been meaning to finish filing it all, had even started putting Emily's name on the restored 1971 Mustang he kept in the garage, but hadn't completed the DMV process yet. He remembered Nate's words, "Get your affairs in order, Caleb. Not because you're planning for the end, but because you're protecting the people you love." He thought he had been. That night, under the low light of the kitchen, Caleb called his uncle. "Nate? It's me. Everything all right?" "No," Caleb said, voice steady. "But it will be. I need to make some changes." They had met the old-fashioned way, in a line for coffee, 3 towns over, after Caleb's truck broke down and he was waiting on a tow. Emily had been wearing glasses too big for her face and ordering something with way too many syllables. She'd smiled at his grease-stained shirt and said, "Rough morning?" 6 months later, they were living together. Married within the year. She worked as a legal assistant at a firm downtown. Smart, witty, and always dressed like she had somewhere important to be. Caleb was a mechanic who fixed cars for a living and built engines for fun. He thought they balanced each other, her ambition, his stability. The early years were good. They saved every dollar, bought a fixer-upper with a crooked porch and yellow walls, and spent weekends restoring it. Caleb did the wiring, plumbing, and insulation. Emily picked the colors, picked the decor, and picked out the right lighting for every room. She posted progress photos online and captioned them, "Dream Team." But over time, something shifted. Her tone when she spoke of his job changed. "Don't you want to do more than fix engines forever?" she'd say, lightly but often. She'd compare him to her friends' husbands, lawyers, consultants, investment brokers. Then came the subtle disappearances. Nights out with coworkers. The secret phone passcode. The new gym bag that always looked unused. Caleb had noticed. He just didn't say anything. He believed people needed space. Trusted that love could stretch. Until it snapped. When the cancer diagnosis came, Emily didn't run, she sprinted. And in doing so, she took more than just money. She took the illusion of partnership. But Caleb wasn't broken. Not yet. He had one thing left, and it was enough: clarity. And he'd use it to rebuild, not the marriage, not the trust, but his own life. Long before cancer darkened Caleb's door, the foundation of his marriage had already started to shift. He just didn't realize it then. Like a house settling over time, the creaks and groans were quiet, subtle, and easy to dismiss. Now, with the benefit of hindsight and an empty house echoing in his ears, he saw the signs had been everywhere. He met Emily Ramsey in the spring of 2016, at a small wedding for one of his childhood friends. She wasn't supposed to be there, just A+1 for a bridesmaid who bailed at the last minute. Caleb had noticed her immediately. She wasn't like the women he usually met around Redfield. She carried herself like someone from a bigger world. Her lipstick didn't smudge when she drank wine. Her jokes were sharp, and her eyes were even sharper. They talked for an hour on the porch of the reception hall, surrounded by twinkle lights and cheap champagne. She asked him what he did. When he said mechanic, she smiled without judgment. "I've got an oil leak that's been talking trash to me for weeks," she joked. "Maybe I need someone with a wrench and a plan." He had laughed, and that was that. They moved fast. Within 6 months, Emily had moved into a small 2-bedroom rental on the edge of town. Within a year, they were married at a courthouse with just Caleb's sister and her then-boyfriend in attendance. They celebrated with diner pancakes afterward. At first, they worked like a team. Emily got a job as a paralegal at a modest firm in the city. Caleb worked full-time at Harlan's Garage, where he'd been wrenching since he was 19. They saved every dime they could, often sacrificing nights out and vacations so they could build toward a future. When Caleb's grandfather passed and left him a parcel of wooded land up in Windermere, they saw it as a blessing, maybe the foundation for something bigger someday. In 2018, they bought a faded greenhouse with a sagging porch and a leaky roof. It was dirt cheap and needed everything, but it was theirs. Caleb spent weekends sanding, hammering, painting, fixing. Emily took pride in choosing the finishes, the rugs, the Instagram captions for their progress photos. "Our little fixer-upper fairy tale," she wrote once. But somewhere between replacing baseboards and paying off the new furnace, something began to wear thin. Emily started talking about the city, Portland, maybe Seattle. Said her law firm had connections, that her boss thought she had potential for more. She wanted more. Caleb had always known that about her. "I'm happy here," he told her one night after dinner, when she brought up the subject again. "My work's good. We've got the house. Everything's coming together." Her fork clinked against the plate as she set it down harder than necessary. "Don't you want anything bigger? Something that doesn't involve grease under your fingernails every day?" He laughed softly, thinking she was teasing. But she wasn't. "Not everyone's chasing skyscrapers," he replied. "I'm not chasing skyscrapers, Caleb. I want options." Over the months that followed, she grew increasingly detached. She began spending more time with a new group of friends he never met. She stopped inviting him to after-work dinners or charity events. He found a business card from a high-rise apartment complex in Seattle tucked into her wallet once. She claimed she picked it up for a friend, but something in her eyes said otherwise. Still, Caleb didn't confront her. That wasn't his way. He believed people needed space to find themselves, even within a marriage. His mother had raised him to be calm, deliberate, and steady, the type of man who doesn't rush to conclusions. After his father died in a construction accident when Caleb was just 12, she raised 2 kids on a teacher's salary and taught them both to survive with grit and grace. Caleb started quietly preparing for the worst. He opened a secondary bank account under his name only, just in case. His uncle Nate helped him start filing paperwork to transfer the land into a secure trust. And when he restored the '71 Mustang in their garage, he made sure the DMV application for co-ownership hadn't yet been filed. He hoped he wouldn't need any of it. Then came the sickness. It started with what felt like a lingering cold. Then came the night sweats. The fatigue. The swollen lymph nodes. Caleb chalked it up to stress or overwork. But eventually, even he couldn't ignore it anymore. The blood tests confirmed what he already sensed. Stage 2 lymphoma. He remembered the night before the official diagnosis. Emily had been scrolling on her phone while eating Thai takeout. He'd been watching her, wondering if she could tell something was wrong. "You good?" she asked. "Just tired," he said, offering her a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She nodded. Didn't ask more. Didn't press. Just went back to her phone. That moment, more than any other, stuck with him. Not the diagnosis. Not the day she left. That moment at the table, where she had the chance to lean in, and instead leaned away. He realized then that she had already left emotionally. The day she packed up was only a formality. 3 days later, the physical departure came. The closet emptied. The text. The wiped-out account. And now, Caleb sat alone in their once shared home, a man with a battle ahead of him, one against a disease trying to take his body, and another against the choices of the person who once vowed to stand beside him in sickness and in health. He wasn't angry. Not exactly. But he was wide awake. And that was the beginning of something new. Something sharp. Clear. A reason to fight, not just for survival, but for something better. For himself. Caleb's first chemotherapy session began in silence. No one sat with him. No hand to squeeze, no whispered jokes to ease the edge of fear. The nurse, Julia, with gentle eyes and steady hands, helped him settle into the recliner. She explained the procedure in a calm, practiced voice, then asked if his ride was waiting in the lobby. "No," Caleb said. "I took a cab." She paused, then gave a sympathetic nod. "First one's always the hardest," she said, checking the drip. "But you'll get through it." He wanted to believe her. But getting through cancer felt easier than getting through what Emily had done. The house was quieter than ever when he got home. Cold, too. He'd turned the thermostat down to save money, now that he was the only one paying bills. The casserole dish on his front porch was still warm, wrapped in foil and sitting atop a hand-scrawled note from Bruce's wife, Carla, "Made extra, thought you could use some." It was a lie. But a kind one. He took the casserole inside and set it on the counter. Tried to eat. Couldn't. By midnight, he was curled on the bathroom floor, shaking and nauseated, the taste of bile in his throat. That night, as the world spun, he realized something. Emily had left him the moment it was no longer easy to stay. And yet, he'd survived. By the 3rd day of treatment, he called Ellie. His sister answered on the 2nd ring. "Caleb? I need to tell you something," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "And I need you to promise not to freak out." She didn't freak out. But she did cry. Then she packed a bag and drove up from Portland the next morning. She stayed for a week, cooking, cleaning, organizing pill bottles, and filling the silence Emily had left behind. On her last night there, as they sat on the porch with blankets over their legs, she asked, "What are you going to do about her?" Caleb didn't answer right away. He looked out at the dark horizon, where the land met the stars. "She didn't just leave me. She stole from me. She ran the moment she found out I was sick, before she even knew what the treatment plan was. That's not just abandonment. That's something worse." Ellie nodded slowly. "You're going to fight, aren't you?" "I don't have a choice," Caleb said. "Not just for the money. For the principle." He called Uncle Nate the next morning. Brought every financial document, legal form, and bank statement to his house in Windermere. Nate spent hours poring over the materials. "She transferred the funds 40 minutes after your doctor's appointment?" Nate asked, eyebrows raised. "That fast?" "She didn't even ask for details. Just knew I was sick. That was enough for her to run." "That's cold," Nate muttered. "Real cold. And possibly illegal. Can I prove it?" Nate leaned back, removing his glasses. "Well, we've got the phone record showing when you called her. Bank timestamps showing when the money moved. And then there's this." He held up Caleb's phone, where the infamous text glared from the screen. "I didn't sign up for this." Nate's mouth tightened. "That's pretty damning." They spent the next few hours building a timeline. The Mustang title, still unfiled at the DMV. The land deed, locked in a safe deposit box under Caleb's name. The newly discovered detail that Emily had tried to withdraw from that box but was denied access. She didn't have the second key. Caleb did. Later that week, Caleb received an email from an unexpected source, Mara, Emily's cousin. She had always been kind, Always the one in the family who didn't seem to share the same polished veneer or condescending smiles. "Logan, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I don't know what Emily is thinking. Just know you have people who care." Caleb replied, "Did she tell you I have cancer?" Mara's answer came fast, "Yes. She told everyone. Said she couldn't handle it and needed to start over. My parents are stunned. This isn't right." Caleb read that message 4 times. Each word dug deeper, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed what he'd suspected all along. Emily knew exactly what she was doing. And she did it anyway. 2 weeks into treatment, the second bombshell landed. A manila envelope arrived at his door, certified mail. Inside, a formal divorce petition from Emily's lawyer. Citing irreconcilable differences, it included a request to remove Emily from the mortgage, but not before she claimed half the equity of the home. Not a word about the money she'd taken. Not a single sentence acknowledging his diagnosis. Caleb took the papers to Nate. "She emptied the account the day I was diagnosed, and now she wants half of everything else?" "She's bold," Nate agreed. "What should I do?" "Don't respond yet. Let's wait. See how far she wants to push this." 3 days later, Caleb received a text from an unfamiliar number. "Caleb, it's Emily. This is my new number. I know you're upset, but we need to talk about the house. My lawyer says I'm entitled to half." He didn't reply. 2 more days passed. "Ignoring me won't solve anything. I know you're going through stuff, but I have rights too." Going through stuff. As if cancer were a phase. As if betrayal could be washed away with a conversation. He blocked the number. His 3rd chemo session was the hardest. He dropped 12 pounds in a week. Couldn't eat. Could barely stand some mornings. Ellie came back, staying 10 days this time, refilling the freezer and driving him to appointments. When the nausea passed, they received another letter from Emily's lawyer, this one more aggressive. More demands. More entitlement. "She's lucky you haven't sued her," Ellie muttered. "We'll get there," Caleb said. Soon after, a letter came from the bank. Emily had tried to remove Caleb's name from their shared credit cards. She'd also attempted to access the safe deposit box, but was denied again. Caleb realized then, someone was feeding her information. Maybe a bank employee. Maybe someone at the DMV. It didn't matter who, not yet. What mattered was what came next. He called Nate. "I think she has someone helping her." Nate didn't sound surprised. "Her father has connections. That family always played chess while the rest of us played checkers. What do I do?" Nate's voice dropped low. "We feed them bad information. Then we watch what they do with it." Caleb nodded. It was time to play their game. Only now, he knew the rules. The next morning, Caleb stepped into a new role, less like the abandoned husband, more like the strategist behind enemy lines. If Emily wanted to play chess, then so be it. Only now, he would control the board. Following Nate's advice, Caleb began carefully seeding false information. It started with a call to the real estate agent handling the parcel of Windmere land. He asked her to pause the listing and mentioned, loudly, that he was considering liquidating other assets to cover mounting medical expenses. He also called his old 401k investment bank from a job he'd left 6 years ago. Asked about early withdrawal penalties. Dropped lines like, "Yeah, I might need it soon. Chemo's not cheap." The bait was set. 2 days later, a new letter arrived from Emily's attorney. Caleb unfolded it at Nate's kitchen table while sipping black coffee. Demanding a share of any proceeds from the land sale, Caleb muttered, scanning the page. "And a full division of my retirement accounts." Nate smirked. She took the bait. She's trying to preemptively claim money she thinks is in motion. But it's not. And now we've got it documented, clear intent to lay claim on assets that aren't even marital property. What now? Now we move. Over the next 3 weeks, Caleb focused on 2 things, healing, and building his case. Treatments were brutal. He was exhausted, his appetite vanished, and his hair thinned to almost nothing. But the scans were showing progress. The numbers were climbing in the right direction. Ellie returned every other weekend. His neighbor Bruce mowed the lawn without asking. Carla dropped off food Caleb could barely eat, but appreciated anyway. His boss at the shop cut his hours while keeping his insurance active. The small-town net was holding him up where Emily had vanished. And Caleb? He was quietly assembling everything he needed for the storm to come. Then came the break. "I got the documents from her bank," Nate said one morning over the phone. "Wanna guess what she did with your money?" Caleb braced himself. "Hit me." She transferred it to a new account under her name. Then wrote a check, $30,000, to her parents. Caleb blinked. Why? My guess? Trying to hide it. Move it out of her name before a judge can freeze it. Can she do that? Not legally. And certainly not ethically. Taking joint funds from a sick spouse, then passing it to a third party? That's textbook concealment. Caleb sat back in his chair, the news swirling in his head. I don't want this to drag on, Nate. I don't have the energy. It won't. This is the kind of thing that makes judges furious. You've got her text. You've got the bank records. You've got witness statements from her cousin confirming she knew about your diagnosis when she ran. We're building a case for financial abandonment and fraud. A few days later, Caleb spotted a silver BMW parked near the cancer center. Windows tinted, engine off. As he approached, he recognized the driver immediately. Franklin Ramsey. Emily's father. Corporate lawyer. Firm handshake. Never called Caleb by name, just my daughter's husband. Caleb walked straight to the car and tapped on the window. Franklin rolled it down with practiced calm. Caleb. You look unwell. Cancer does that to a person, Caleb replied flatly. Why are you here? Emily's concerned. She says you're being unreasonable. Caleb gave a half smile. That what she calls it? Unreasonable? She's willing to be generous, considering your circumstances. She's prepared to settle, split the equity in the house, maybe negotiate a portion of your retirement. Caleb stared. After she emptied our account the day I was diagnosed? Franklin shifted slightly, but kept his cool. She was emotional. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. It was premeditated. Look, Caleb, Franklin said, his voice dropping, you're not well. You need to focus on getting better. Not fighting a legal battle you can afford. That was the moment Caleb saw it, what they truly believed. That he was broken. That he'd roll over. That the cancer would make him desperate enough to accept crumbs. They didn't know he'd planned for this. That Emily's name was never finalized on the Mustang. That the land sale was buzzed. That every lie was documented. I'll have my response to her lawyer by Friday, Caleb said. You can pass that along. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Caleb just walked away. That Friday, Caleb sat in the office of Catherine Chen, a bulldog of a family attorney Nate had brought in. Together with Nate, they laid out everything, the bank withdrawals, Emily's message, her cousin's testimony, the funds transferred to her parents. This is textbook financial abandonment during medical crisis, Catherine said, flipping through the documents. Not to mention an attempt to conceal marital assets. So what's our move? Caleb asked. We file our own divorce petition. With claims of abandonment, financial misconduct, and emotional distress tied to a known health crisis. We ask for full recovery of the missing funds, relinquishment of her claim on the house, car, land, and retirement accounts. We'll also include legal fees. Caleb hesitated. Will it work? Catherine smiled. If this were any more airtight, I'd frame it. On Monday, the petition was sent. By noon, Emily's attorney requested an emergency meeting. They weren't expecting a counterattack, Nate said over the phone. They thought you were a broken man. Caleb chuckled bitterly. They thought wrong. The meeting happened in a wood-paneled conference room downtown. Emily arrived with Franklin and her lawyer, a man with slicked back hair and a briefcase worth more than Caleb's truck. She looked radiant. Hair styled, nails done, tan from some retreat or vacation. The kind of glow that didn't come from grief. Caleb sat at the far end of the table, quiet but present. Catherine did the talking. We're not here to negotiate, she began. We're offering a final opportunity to settle before we proceed to court. Emily's lawyer bristled. Your client is making outrageous demands. Your client stole $38,000 from a man newly diagnosed with cancer. Then tried to hide that money through her parents. We have documentation. Franklin spoke up, attempting diplomacy. Surely there's a reasonable compromise. Accepting fraudulent funds makes you complicit, Catherine said, turning to him. Do you intend to return the $30,000 check your daughter gave you? The silence in the room was thick. What exactly are you demanding? The lawyer finally asked. Catherine slid the paper forward. Return of all funds. Emily relinquishes claims to the house, Mustang, land, and retirement. Legal fees covered. In exchange, we don't pursue criminal charges. This is robbery, Franklin muttered. No, Catherine replied coolly. What your daughter did was robbery. This is justice. As they left, Emily tried to catch Caleb's eye. He didn't look back. In the elevator, Nate patted his shoulder. You just sat there. Calm as stone. "Sometimes that's how you win," Caleb replied. 2 days later, Catherine called. "They've accepted all terms. Plus." Caleb didn't celebrate when Catherine delivered the news. He didn't pop champagne or raise a victorious fist in the air. He just sat in the corner booth of the cafe near her office, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, and let the word "finalized" settle into the silence between them. Emily had signed the settlement. Every term. Every condition. She would return the full $38,000. Relinquish all claims to the house, the Mustang, the Windmere land, and his retirement accounts. In return, Caleb wouldn't press criminal charges. Franklin had personally delivered the first bank check, tight-lipped and pale. "It's done," Catherine said softly. "You won." But it didn't feel like winning. Not really. It felt like scraping yourself off a battlefield and realizing you were the only one left standing. The flag's torn, the ground scorched, but your lungs still drawing breath. A week later, the divorce was official. Signed, filed, sealed. A 13-page document closed a 6-year chapter of Caleb's life. He walked out of the courthouse into the sharp spring air, blinking against the sunlight, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Nate was waiting outside with a small paper bag from their favorite diner. "Brought you pie," he said. "Because you need something sweet after all that bitter." Caleb laughed, a real one, the first in weeks. That night, he drove home in silence. No music, just the hum of the engine and the low whir of tires on wet asphalt. The house looked different now. Less haunted. He parked the truck, let Scout, his aging shepherd, out into the yard, and stood on the back porch watching the sky turn violet. His phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. "I heard everything's finalized. I'm glad. I know you won't believe this, but I think about you often. I made a mistake. I was scared. I'm sorry, Caleb. For everything." It was from Emily. He stared at it for a long time, letting her words try and wriggle under his skin. But nothing got in. He typed 4 words. "I survived. Be well." Then he blocked the number. No more back doors. No more explanations. Just a clean line drawn in the sand. The money came through on day 29 of the 30-day deadline, a cashier's check for the full amount. Caleb deposited it and immediately paid down the last of his medical bills. Julia, the nurse who had sat with him through every chemo round, smiled when he handed her the payment. "Your numbers are looking better," she said. "And you've got color again." Caleb nodded. "Still here. Still fighting," she added. But the fighting was nearly done. 6 weeks later, he sat in Dr. Mendez's office, waiting for the results of his final scan. The doctor came in with a smile that said more than the clipboard in her hand. Complete remission. 2 words. That's all it took to punch through months of fear, nausea, exhaustion, and heartbreak. He didn't cry. But he did close his eyes, breathe deeply, and let the moment sink in. "What happens now?" he asked. "We monitor you," she said. "Every 6 months. Blood work, scans. But today? Today you go live your life." He nodded. "I plan to." That evening, Caleb called Ellie. She screamed so loudly he had to pull the phone away. Then she cried. Then she started planning a visit. His second call was to Joel, the owner of a custom restoration shop in Missoula who had been trying to poach Caleb for years. "You still got space in that garage of yours?" Caleb asked. "Hell yes," Joel replied. "When can you start?" 2 months later, the house in Redfield was sold. Caleb left behind the creaking porch, the kitchen where Emily once joked about burnt toast, the bedroom where he'd lain awake alone too many nights. He bought a modest cabin outside Missoula, 2 bedrooms, a detached garage big enough to fit the Mustang, and a view of the Bitterroot Mountains from every window. Scout adjusted quickly. So did Caleb. Every morning started with coffee on the porch. Every evening ended with a few hours under the hood of the Mustang, rebuilding what he'd once nearly given away. And for the first time in years, he was doing it just for himself. Not to impress. Not to save something that wasn't worth saving. But because it brought him peace. People in the town got to know him slowly. Joel introduced him to the team, young gearheads with fire in their bellies, eager to learn. Caleb taught them how to coax life out of old metal, how to listen to engines like they spoke their own language. He wasn't just healing. He was rebuilding. 3 months in, another message arrived. Not from Emily. This time, it was Mara, her cousin. "Hey Caleb, just wanted to say. I'm so sorry again for what my family did. I heard her parents had to sell their lake cabin to pay you back. They're telling people it's your fault. But I know the truth. A few of us do. I hope you're happy. You deserve it." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. Because for once, someone else had said everything that needed saying. One evening, he was in the garage, tuning the Mustang's carburetor, when Ellie pulled into the driveway. She stepped out holding 2 paper bags. "You didn't think I'd miss your birthday, did you?" "I forgot it was my birthday," Caleb admitted. They ate on the porch. Scout lay between them, tail thumping softly against the wooden planks. "You're different," Ellie said after a while. "Not hardened. Just clearer." "I think I know who I am now," Caleb said. "Not who she wanted me to be. Not who I was before. Just me." Ellie smiled. "Took a hell of a journey to get here." "Yeah," he said. "But I'm here." That night, as the sun dipped below the mountains, Caleb stood in the doorway of his garage, looking at the Mustang, its chassis gleaming, its engine rumbling like a storm held in place. He'd survived cancer. He'd survived betrayal. He'd survived being torn down to his last thread. And somehow, he was still here. Not just alive, but whole. Rebuilt. Restored. And finally free.